and welcome to Ella's Legendary Literature Show. Today we are going to discuss The Picture of Dorian Gray, a novel by Oscar Wilde. Our first guest of the night is Oscar Wilde. Hello, Oscar.
Hello.
All right, let's hear a little bit about your life, Oscar.
So my life is pretty boring. Thank you for inviting me to the show, by the way.
You're welcome.
But I was born on October 16th, 1854, and died 64 years later, on November 30th, 1900, of meningitis. I was not lonely, but instead married to Constance Lloyd, which 1884 is our date, and had 2 children, Cyril and Vivian. I've written this book, A Picture of Dorian Gray, as well as several other poems and plays. Something interesting about me is I was accused of being a sodomite, but then I actually sued the accuser, but somehow I was found guilty and was sentenced to 2 years of labor in 1895.
Wow, that's rough.
A critic of this novel, Patrick Dugan, argues that Oscar Wilde highlights the aesthetic movements popular in Victorian England, like the idea that real art takes no part in molding social or moral identities of society, nor should it contribute to societal behaviors.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about some historical context of this novel. Queen Victoria was in power during this time, and she created a monarchy of great economic, political, and societal change. The setting of this book often expresses the separation between aristocrats and the middle class by using elements of setting, structure of the novel, and character development. The Victorian era was a thriving time for Gothic literature. Gothic literature explores the darkest parts of human nature. In The Picture of Dorian Gray, a Gothic novel, it reveals the darkest sides of normal people and discusses the evil things hidden by a good reputation. During the Victorian era, people often found reputation to be the most important factor when judging a person. As a key character in the novel, Basil Hallward puts it, every gentleman is interested in his good name. As reputation grew to be one of the most important factors of a person, people began to hide the darkest parts of their life in order to keep a respectable face to the people around them. And you'll see this in the novel that we'll talk about later. Unfortunately, we've had to move this episode of Ella's Legendary Literary Show to an at-home Zoom interview due to a recent outbreak of viral meningitis by Oscar Wilde. He says it wasn't his fault, but that just doesn't make sense. Anyways, up next is Eiley with all the details of literary movements throughout the Victorian era.
Thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. I'm terribly sorry to hear about the meningitis outbreak, but I'm so honored to be on this Zoom call. So, as we know, The Picture of Dorian Gray was set during the 19th century, and literary movements during the Victorian era paralleled societal changes that occurred during this time period and included Romanticism, Realism, and Naturalism. Many works of art and literature focused around concepts of extreme materialism of the rich, lack of inner beauty, and an individual's obsession with reputation. The Picture of Dorian Gray tackles a few of these Victorian ideals. The first being the separation of aristocrats from the middle class, as seen through characters like Lord Henry, which represent the wealthy higher class, and Basil representing the hard-working middle class. The contrasting lifestyles of these characters and how they never interact, unless Dorian is present, mirrors individuals in the Victorian era and the hard divide and disconnect between social classes. Also, The Picture of Dorian Gray as a whole is commentary that rejects the Victorian emphasis on youth and beauty over character. Dorian attempts to cover his immoral behaviors by his good reputation and appearances, but in the end, his corrupt soul is revealed. These dark truths are hidden within Dorian Gray's character and highlight Oscar Wilde's use of Gothic Romanticism. Other authors that use elements of Romanticism and Gothic aesthetics like Wilde during this time period include Mary Shelley, which wrote Frankenstein, Charlotte Brontë, the author of Jane Eyre, and Charles Dickens, the author of A Tale of Two Cities. And that's all I have, so now it's back to Ella.
Wow, I never knew that. Up next is Oscar Wilde again, with some insight into literary devices used throughout his novel and how they influence the entire story.
Yes, hello, glad to be back. When Dorian passes away by Basil's portrait of himself, he notices a change in the facial features. Wilde's use of imagery helps us to visualize what the picture looks like. He says, "The face seemed to him to be a little changed. The expression looked different. One would have said that there was a touch of cruelty in the mouth, but the strange expression that he had noticed in the face of the portrait seemed to linger there, to be more intensified even." Wilde goes even further by using the imagery that he represents in the picture to represent how the character of Dorian, as Dorian, wished for himself to stay young and the portrait yet to be old. Wilde says that his own beauty might be untarnished, and the face on the canvas bear the burden of Dorian's passions and his sins, that the painted image might be seared with the lines of suffering and thought, and that he might keep all the delicate bloom and loveliness of his than just conscious boyhood.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Have you been feeling rather tired, bored, or maybe feel like your soul is being sucked out of your body? Well, do we have a solution for you? The Sills paint brushes are going on sale for only a limited time today. Call 8179-458708 and we'll ship you 3 free packs of Basil paint brushes for free. Again, that's 8179-458708. Now you can paint your soul out all you want. Make sure not to accidentally lose yourself while staring at your immaculate works of art.
Wow, I love your use of literary devices throughout the novel, Oscar. Up next is an exclusive interview with Dorian Gray himself. So Dorian, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Hey Ella, thank you so much for having me. My name is Dorian Gray, and this is the story of how I sold my soul to the devil. I'm dead, by the way, if you couldn't tell. So basically it all started, I was a beautiful young man, even though I'm dead now and old and wrinkly. But I met this guy named Basil, and he was going to paint a picture of me. And I really hate the way that I'm depicted in art, just because, with time comes age, and, with age becomes ugliness. But yeah, and this guy named Lord Henry was a brilliant guy, by the way, looked up to him a lot, taught me that London really only values wealth and status and nothing on the inside. But I really looked up to him, and from there on I met this girl, fell in love with her, not for the right reasons. But her name was Sibia. I don't really care to remember. I'm a horrible human being, by the way. She killed herself because I broke off the engagement. Whoops. But it was so sad because it really hurt my reputation. Even the painting started to get ugly and bad, and she really ruined my reputation. So that was really sad. But it was almost beautiful, how the story played out of how this self-inflicted tragedy took its toll on me. Anyways, Lord Henry gave me this book, but I just felt my soul slip away while I was reading it. It was super interesting, and I just entered this never-ending cycle of sin. Sure, I was gonna go to hell, but who knows? The boundary between the spiritual world and the reality can't be broken. But let's see what happens. I mean, obviously something's going on. The painting was changing by itself, which should be humanly impossible. I mean, don't even get me started on Wilde's writing and style. I mean, it's so stupid. It was so weird for the time. I mean, all these stupid one-liners, I guess, are supposed to hypnotize the audience or get them to truly think about the meaning. I mean, that one part where he's like, those who find ugly meanings in beautiful things are corrupt, or experience is merely the name man gave to their mistakes. Bro, shut up. You're not meaningful at all. We all know that the only things that are valuable in life are beautiful things. I mean, why would you ever value someone that's nice to you? I mean, I just could never fathom. My reputation got to a point where it was not recoverable, and so I wanted to kill Basil. Why did he make this painting of me? Of course I wouldn't kill him. Well, actually I ended up killing him. I stabbed him in the heart. Whoops, he's dead. And I hated this picture. I hated what I became, and the guilt overtook me. So I took the knife and I plunged it deep into the painting, but something weird happened and I died. The knife was in my heart. So basically I killed myself, which is kind of beautiful, how the whole story played out. But I guess the biggest takeaway is just be a good person on the inside, value not just beauty. Youthfulness does not equal power, and don't let negative influences influence you. So yeah, there's my story. Back to you, Ella. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh wow, that was a lot, Dorian. Thank you. Okay, so that was the end of today's episode, and I would like to give a big thank you to everyone who made it happen. Tune in next week for the newest episode of Ella's Legendary Literary Show.